Welcome to the Redeemed Vision podcast, where we bring sight to the blind and freedom to those enslaved by our pornified culture. Here, we dive into hard but important topics such as pornography, sexual identity, true freedom, real love, and living marriage well. Go deep with us as we uncover what redeemed vision means for each of us living in the world today. Come to know yourself, the power of redemption through Jesus Christ, the joy of laughter, and how to live in gratitude and wonder. This is Redeemed Vision.
Hello again. Welcome to another edition of the Redeemed Vision podcast. I'm your host, Steve Pokorny. This is an outreach of Freedom Coaching Foundation Incorporated and Freedom Coaching. Where at Freedom Coaching, we are working to set the blind free from the pornified culture, helping both men and women break free from the attraction of pornography and unchaste behavior. I encourage you to take a look at our work at freedom-coaching.net. I've said it so many times, I nearly forget. One other, just also some other housekeeping here. Do you have a will? If you don't, why not? And in fact, if you don't have a will, then you are planning to leave your loved ones at risk of not being taken care of. Guess what? There's something very simple. It's called mycatholicwill.com/freedom coaching. If you click on that link that we'll put in our notes, you can set up your will for as little as $0. It's not going to cost you a dime. We're footing the bill, and it allows you to take care of your family in about 15 minutes or less. I encourage you to take a look at it, as it is pretty spectacular. And I encourage you also on this, if this is important to you, what you're hearing, I encourage you, first off, hit the like button if it's on that platform you're listening on there, to share this, to hit the bell, get this message out, because these are messages that are not being heard in many places, especially in the way we're doing this. And then the other piece is, if you like what we're doing, consider making a gift to us, either a monthly gift or maybe an annual gift. This helps us to stay on the air, helps us to spread this word here, and help a lot of people. Now, let's move on to our conversation for today, because we have been told in many cases that, we want genuine love. We want a flourishing in our relationships, right? I think that's what we hear many times in our movies, our music sometimes, or maybe is it another message we're getting, right? I think anybody who knows that they've been living in the world today, there's a lot of confusing messages, right? And anybody who's been in any sort of relationships knows that getting to the place of genuine love, genuine understanding, where I can be seen for who I am, to love for who I am, that can be difficult, right? And this is especially true if we've been dealing with hurts and wounds. And it's especially true if we've had a history of pornography, or maybe pornography is going on right now in our lives. So, because it can be said that we live right now in a pornified culture. It's a world where we see each other through a lens of using the other person for a means of one's own selfish gratification. And anyone who's tried to live a genuinely good relationship, a loving relationship, knows that selfishness is the one thing that will deep six any relationship, whether it's romantic or otherwise, right? So I'm bringing in a heavy hitter today. I don't know if he considers himself that, but I'll say that, right? This is Dr. Mario Sacasa, and he's a licensed marriage and family therapist. He's been in practice for 20 years. He's integrating the riches of the Catholic faith with sound counseling as the aim of his career, and also influences on a lot of other professional endeavors. He is the host of the podcast, Always Hope. I encourage you to check out his work there. And this is all about providing solutions for living a better life grounded in faith and psychological sciences. He travels all over the world talking about the issues, very important issues of dating, marriage, sexuality, and also especially helping to correct any misunderstandings we have about hope. He has served on many different entities, including faculty at Notre Dame, a seminary, Divine Mercy University, and also the Institute for Priestly Formation. He's been on a lot of different other podcasts as well, and so I'm honored to have him here. And his most important claim to fame is he is married to his wife of 22 years, Kristen, and with whom he shares the joy of parenting their 4 sons. Dr. Mario, welcome to the Redeemed Vision podcast.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the invitation. This is great. We're going to have a great time.
Amen. Amen. We are. And actually, so I mentioned this in the email. You may have missed it. This is kind of the way that we like to start things out. Do you have a dad joke for us?
Yeah, of course. I'm a dad. I wouldn't have.
Awesome.
I didn't know if we were doing it at the beginning or at the end.
I didn't have to pull your dad joke card. I didn't have to call a yellow card on that. So hit us. What do you got?
Yeah. Okay. So what do you call a cow with no legs?
Ground beef.
That's it.
What do you call a cow with 2 legs?
Oh, you got me on that one. I don't know.
Lean beef.
Lean beef. Okay. So you keep going. This is
what
good.
do you call a cow with 4 legs?
A cow.
High stakes.
High stakes.
What do you call a cow that got knighted?
That got what?
Has been knighted.
Knighted?
Uh-huh.
Keep going. Yeah.
Sirloin.
Sirloin.
I promise you, kids, we did not plan this at all. Well done. Well done. I love it. I love it. I love it. Here, you want to hear the one that I had? Ready to go?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Right.
Let's go.
So there's a farmer. He had a really bad crop. Just a terrible, terrible harvest. So he decided he was going to become a musician. Do you know why?
No, I don't know why. Why?
He had some really sick beats.
He had some really sick beats. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, you can totally use that with kids. I love that. All right. So, and we say this, they're gonna love it. So we start off podcasts with that because oftentimes we get into some pretty serious, pretty heavy stuff here, and
sure.
And and by the way, dad jokes are a part of life, and it's part of the work we do at Freedom Coaching. So we love it. But I want to go before we get kind of your professional journey and a lot of the good advice I'm sure that you're going to drive into today. I want to share a little bit, get into who you are personally a little bit, right? So for those who don't know you, right, who's Dr. Mario Sacasa?
I am a beloved son of the Father. I am a husband to my wife, Kristen. I am father to my 4 boys. That's the main part of my identity, and is relational. And that's what matters most, is living my family life, living the vocation that God has called me to live, and to be faithful in that capacity, first and foremost. Anything I do professionally is only to serve that greater purpose of what God has given to me. So
beautiful.
Professionally, I'm a marriage therapist. I've been in practice, as you said in the intro, for close to 20 years. I have specialized my work on finding these points of integration between what our faith teaches and what the science actually communicates about best practices related to counseling. I operate a private counseling practice here in Charlotte, and I'm licensed in a couple states outside of North Carolina where I can see clients. I see everybody virtually. And then I also host the podcast, Always Hope, and I travel across the country giving lectures on the themes that you mentioned already. So that's a little bit about who I am.
I love it. Thank you so much. So I want to go back early because I wanted to have I gave a little bit off your bio. I wanted you to go.
Yeah.
I may have missed. And so I'm going to go back to the beginning of your life in a certain sense. What were the messages, especially growing up? And again, you can lay out whatever your family life was like growing up. What were those messages about marriage and family that you picked up from your own parents?
Yeah, so we're immigrants. We came to the United States when I was 1. We're from Nicaragua. It's where I was born. It's where my family's history is. That's where we've identified and lived. My parents were born and raised in Nicaragua, and they had to leave the country due to civil unrest. And so some of the messages that I learned early on was just coming to this country, being a family, rallying together, being in a new culture, learning a new language, doing everything that the immigrant story we know, and seeing my parents strive for a better future for us, trying to leave a bad situation to bring us to a country that's going to give us better opportunities. Yeah, what I learned growing up is that family matters. And my dad made tremendous sacrifices for us. My parents, both of them, made tremendous sacrifices for us. And so I just picked up on that. I knew that we had to work hard, had to provide, had to take care of the kids, had to do what was needed, even if that required moving to different states to pursue opportunities. So I'm grateful for my parents. I really can't stress it enough. They weren't perfect, but they tremendously provided a foundation for us, for all of us. I'm one of 4 as well. I'm the youngest of the 4 kids, and just seeing them and their marriage, and they've now been married for 56 years will be this August. So 55 years currently. just seeing their story, knowing what they've done, provided a tremendous, tremendous blueprint for us. Again, they're not perfect. They have their flaws, which we all do. But by and large, I am incredibly grateful for the foundation that my parents gave me.
Praise God. What a gift. What a gift. 56 years this year. Let's, everyone who's here, say a prayer. Thanksgiving for Dr. Marcos. Yeah, none of us come out of a bubble in this, and then clearly your parents had a what a witness to love. Thank God for them.
Witness to love, witness to hope. I mean, like just seeing the story. I mean, I'll share this kind of in context. Like during COVID, when everything was at its worst and we were at the lockdowns early on, before we knew anything, when we were all terrified of this little virus coming on the mail and everything that we were worried about.
Yes.
My mom at that time, she kind of picked up on it, and she kind of knew that I was a little nervous. We were having a conversation, and she said, she just started this random discussion I was having with my mom on the phone in the middle of COVID. She just started recanting like our story and how we left Nicaragua, how we came to the States, how she learned English, and just did a play-by-play again of the story that I know and I'm familiar with. And she just did all that and then ended it saying, like, we got through that and we're going to get through this. And so just having that as an experience, as an anchor to my upbringing, has been able to help when anxiety happens or when uncertainty happens, to know that we can pull back on that and hold back on that and saying, all right, God's faithfulness has been with our family all the way through, and it's going to get us through even this particular difficulty.
Amen. And may we remember that even though we're out of the COVID era, it seems to be, there are difficulties in life, and we can cling to God's faithfulness.
Yep,
it's beautiful.
That's right.
So fast forward, what moves you to become a marriage and family therapist? That's pretty specified in this. Are there any specific defining moments in your journey, like, aha, this is what I want to do here?
Yes. So my dad is an anesthesiologist, and I thought being a doctor was what I wanted to do. And growing up, I had indicated that I wanted to be a doctor. That was my plan. That was my trajectory. Went to Florida State University and registered as a biology major and pursued that. Got a year into that major and realized I wasn't quite loving it. It wasn't really adding up. It wasn't making sense for me. And then I took organic chemistry, and organic chemistry is a weed out class. As many people know who've taken it, they understand that it is a class designed I'm out. Yep. It's meant to, sift the mice from the men. And I was not one of the men. That's just the reality of it. So at 19, I was like, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, but I'm not connecting with the material. I'm not enjoying this. I failed organic chemistry. This is just not the trajectory that I'm supposed to be on. And at the end of that year, that was sophomore year of college, I had a conversation again with my mom, who's been an instrumental figure throughout my life here. And she said, like, you were always the kid in high school who your friends wanted to talk to. You were always the kid that had people over having conversations. Like, why don't you consider becoming a therapist and pursuing psychology? I didn't know what she meant by that, what was happening, what she was thinking. I didn't really understand what that was, but I took Psych 101 that summer between sophomore and junior year, and like a fish to water. It was like, that's it, man. Like, this is what I wanted. And it gave a better definition for what I wanted to do. I thought that I wanted to help people through their medical difficulties, but taking Psych 101, what I realized is I wanted to help people through their emotional difficulties. So I switched majors, got the degree in psychology. My wife and I, we got married right outside of college, and we spent 2 years doing missionary work in a rural community in Alabama, where I realized even more so that I was ill-equipped to be able to serve the students and the young people that I was working with at the time. So then I went and got my master's in marriage and family counseling from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And the focus on that was, at the time, the theology of the body was becoming a thing. The Good News of Sex and Marriage had just been published in the early 2000s. My spiritual director at the time was somebody who was deeply rooted in JP2's thought and line of thinking. And so it made a lot of sense for me, realizing the church's vision for marriage, for sexuality, and coupling that with what science had to teach. It was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. And so I've worked with hundreds of couples over the years. I've spoken to, I don't even know how many couples, through marriage seminars and retreats and conferences. and I've spoken to countless others through the podcast as well. And just being able to help people through their relationships, and whether it's dating, whether that's marriage, just to guide people to see and to understand how to live this great teaching that the church does provide for us.
Amen. So what you're hearing, kids, is we're talking to Dr. Mario Sacasa, here on the Redeemed Vision podcast, is we have an authentically Catholic psychologist who is able to
therapist, technically. So I just don't want to get in trouble. Okay, so there are licensed differences between psychology, counseling.
You're right. I came out of my mouth. I'm like, thank you, therapist. We have an authentically good. Nobody's getting sued here for the podcast.
Yeah, hopefully not. That's right. Yeah. You said it, not me. You said it, not me. I just want to be able to make it abundantly clear. Right? No false advertising from my side.
So an authentically Catholic therapist, right, that is able to be able to dig into the weeds here to find some answers, right? And that is a rare breed, because we have those, again, in the work we do, we stay on the coaching line in the work that we're doing with clients. But we know that sometimes there's a lot of psychological issues that need to be worked through, and we're always looking for new counselors and therapists to be able to recommend. So guess who gets to go on the list? Dr. Mario does. This is exciting.
Great. Now, I have to say, there is a growing number of Catholic therapists, and which is just wonderful to see. So an organization like the Catholic Psychotherapy Association can't recommend that enough for people. If people are looking for a therapist, go on the member directory, find somebody through that platform, go on catholictherapist.com, even do a simple search through Psychology Today, click on finding a Christian counselor, looking for people. You will find somebody in your state. If there's one thing that really came that was good out of the COVID pandemic, was that every therapist got comfortable doing remote sessions. So you no longer need to find somebody in your specific community. You can find somebody who's licensed in your state. There are also movements for interstate compacts to be able to provide therapy across state lines. You can find a therapist who does that. So it's just the accessibility of finding a trained, qualified counselor is a lot easier to get a hold of than it was even 7 years ago.
And just one commentary on that's just coming to mind here is like, there is something to be said for one-to-one in-person counseling. There's something to be said for that. We in the theology of the body world, the body matters. There's something to be said about that, right? But we also are finding, and again, this is the bread and butter of the work that we do. It is it's a large part of the work that you do, I'm assuming, Dr. Mario. But it's really about helping people find the answers that they're looking for, and then being able to implement those answers into their life in a life-changing way in many cases. So absolutely agree with you that if you can do it in person, great. But there's also some really good options to work online as well. So I want to move to the topic for our conversation today, right? Sure. And really along these lines of it's ironic the work that we do in freedom coaching, where we're day in, day out with men and women who are struggling with pornography, attraction, compulsion.
Steve, I want to interrupt you. Actually, I do want to ask you a question before we jump into the dating piece. But how do you in freedom coaching find the line between coaching and therapy? Like, what do you instruct your coaches to know the distinction and when they should be making a referral for something, for counseling? Yeah.
Great question. So I'm being interviewed on our own podcast, which is great. I'm wide open to that. Maybe it'll be a lead into maybe if we do a podcast on yours, we'll find out. So the best articulation I ever heard was actually coming from Steve Motel. He's one of our coaches, and he says a counselor, a therapist, they're like an archaeologist. They're digging into the past, trying to find answers in there, right? And that's very helpful. With coaching, I've got a house I want to build. I have no idea how to do it. So I'm calling in an architect, basically, who's going to help me to do this. And in the work that we're doing, right, the foundation sometimes is a little fuzzy here, right? So we are in the work, especially we have 4 stages in our work. Stage 1, we're looking especially at a client's history, but at the emotions of the event. I'm not interested really in the why. I'm going to let our chief psychologist, his name is Jesus. You might've heard of him. He goes to work on that at some point in the work. And so just to get access to what were the emotions, talk about what the emotions are, because as the old phrase goes, emotions buried alive are still alive, right? What are those things going on there? And we found that the 3 emotions that most people are walking in, which are more than just an emotion, but especially where they come up, is the guilt, the shame, and the self-hatred, right? And that force field, we like to call it, if that doesn't get dropped, all the good stuff that we want to do in building the walls and getting the insulation in, and to use this house analogy, it won't stick. That house is going to fall. So by getting just acts of that, then we're able to turn them over to Jesus, and he does the work. We don't have to get in any of the shall we say, psychoanalysis. Like, that's not our place. So I would say, how do we know when to turn people over? One's easy. When we discover a narcissist is here, well, narcissists know everything, and we can't clearly help you. So we would recommend that out. Somebody who's dealing with is exhibiting symptoms of bipolar, we know clearly that is not our wheelhouse of those things. And we also would say to we say to anybody who's coming to us for help, we're not the end all be all, right? We're really good in the niche that we do, right? We help countless men and women in the work we're doing. If there's other psychological needs that are here, especially if we're coming back to, especially childhood trauma that is maybe there was physical abuse that was going on, right? That's not going to be our absolute focus of the work we're doing. Jesus might address it, and we've seen people get healing there, but that's not our exact focus on there. So for they need to know they need to go back in there. That's where we recommend out. And then also, especially, we're freedom coaches. We're not marriage coaches, right? We're not marriage counseling. So if you're finding that you're having that need in there, some of our members of our team are good in navigating some marital issues, but if you're finding like the two of you need to come together to work through some things, we're gonna be recommending that out for others. So again, Dr. Mario, you might be getting more than a couple calls. From us.
It's always important to know what those lines are for people, because something like a CSAT training, which is a certified sex addiction training, is a multifaceted training for people to be able to get that certification so that they know how to work specifically with sex addicts. And I know friends and colleagues who have that certification and do tremendous work in the counseling arena through that. And so just being able to have that distinction to know, like, all right, coaching can help maybe with certain issues or certain cases, but knowing when it's like, all right, we need to be able to make this referral to somebody so that they're able to get the treatment that they need, and not wanting to overcommit or do more than, or overpromise,
Absolutely agree with you on that point. And I would say, like, our main, especially in the work we do, is we want what's best for our clients, right? And so if they're not getting the help we need, like, your will is as free as the wind. There are others here, and we can make recommendations that can help there. The good news is those who come to work here know they've got this attachment. I want it broken, and we get to see beautiful things happen. So I'm grateful for that. But moving into, so thank you for asking that, right? So moving into this, like, the specific issue of pornography, especially we're going to pornography, dating, things like that, and moving to marriage. How have you seen in your work the impact of pornography with dating, engaged couples, marriages? Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, so 3 different kind of segments there. Why don't we focus on dating for the time being? I have a program called Dating Well, where I walk couples through the ins and outs of the modern dating scene. It is designed for couples who are dating to help them kind of be able to get through some questions and knowing when to talk about what. But it's also a great resource for singles who can help increase their confidence and manage appropriate expectations moving into the next relationship, or being able to process why their last relationship didn't quite work out for them. One of the lessons is on this topic of pornography. And as you've indicated, we live in a culture where we are just saturated. You can't open even a dating app, a secular dating app, and not feel like you're looking at some softcore porn based on the profiles that people are displaying of themselves. And so it is just in our face, it's everywhere, and it's accepted, it's normalized, it's become the standard for what we think sexuality is supposed to be. And when we see the research, as I'm sure you're very familiar with, we notice that obviously there's a large number of men that use pornography, but even sites like Pornhub are stating that they have regular female users. I think like 31% of their users are females. And so we are just seeing this rise even within both sexes. But I think when it comes to dating specifically, how to manage this conversation, it's not something that needs to be brought up in the first date, I would say. I was giving a talk at a college campus a couple years ago, and one of the questions that came up from one of the students was like about this issue, and she said, "I believe that pornography should be disclosed on the very first date." And I was like, good luck getting a first date if that's what your expectation is. Like I was like, ain't no guy going to share that on the first date, nor do I think he should, right? There should be some type of relationship that is formed, not some type, there should be a relationship that's formed, and intimacy and vulnerability grow as the relationship grows. Now, at some point, it should be disclosed in terms of the use, frequency. I'm not sure if all the specifics or the in and outs needs to be disclosed, but something for the person that you're dating so that they can have a healthy understanding of what's going on and to be able to have eyes wide open on their discernment. If it is too much, so here's the challenge, right? When it comes to dating, should a guy even be in a dating relationship if he is struggling with pornography? Well, it depends, right? I mean, it depends the degree of the addiction that is present. For some guys that I've worked with, I've seen that the dating becomes a distraction to their recovery, and they shouldn't be in a committed relationship because they need to be doing the steps. They need to be involved in SA. They need to be involved in therapy. They need to be involved in doing the things that they need to do to get healthy and get free from their addiction. But then there are other guys who I've walked with in counseling who dating has actually been the thing that's helped them speed along their recovery, because now they have this person in front of them that they're able to see, and they can make the appropriate sacrifices and grow in the appropriate virtues for them. So for any guy who's listening, there is some discernment that needs to happen within yourself to be able to see, like, all right, is this relationship hindering my growth, or is this relationship aiding my growth? And again, as I was indicating even earlier, there needs to be openness and conversation about what that is. And at some point in any dating relationship, when you're getting serious and really discerning marriage, there needs to be discussions about past relationships, previous sexual experiences, what's been going on there. Again, that's not a conversation you have on the first date, like I said, but it's a conversation you should have sometime before engagement also, so that there's just transparency and that there can be real discernment and a real prayer and compassion or understanding for each other. So I think that just walking into this conversation, into your question, is I would say, first and foremost, for any guy, do some discernment about whether or not you're in a place where you can go forward or not in a relationship. And then if you are in a relationship, knowing when to start bringing this topic up so that there can be real conversation and intimacy that can be formed within the dating relationship.
Okay, this is a great starting salvo on this. I love it. And one of the analogies that we like to use in our work is the image of a campfire, right? In order to start a campfire, you do need kindling, right? You need tinder, shall we say, right? And use that. That's the initial attraction, like as John Paul would say in Love and Responsibility, right? The attraction is the raw material of love, right? If you're going on that first date and there's not attraction, it's probably a sign this isn't going to work out. Maybe it could grow over time.
That's right.
Right? There are there's no hard and set rules in the sense that we're looking at principles, right? And if you are trying to start a campfire and you try to drop a log on that immediately, right? Good golly, I like to put it this way, right? That first date, if you try to drop the log, she's like, "You're freaking me out. I'm leaving." Right?
As she should. Yes.
And I think, go ahead.
No, just emotional intimacy. I mean, like boundaries. Like boundaries are okay. Like so keep going. I love the analogy. Keep going.
So on this point, like I think in the world we have, because many of us are so much into our devices. That's the programming, especially our younger brothers and sisters are getting, right? And we haven't had these face-to-face real get-togethers. Just the fact that a ton of guys today are not asking these beautiful, young, lovely, eligible bachelorettes on a genuine date, right? That's one issue. And I think we got some fear involved here. But then once maybe we do make it to the lightning round, right? We do make it to the, I like to call the first date, right? We have this opportunity in front of us, and somebody's actually seeing me for me, or there's the appearance of that, right? We emotionally vomit right there,
right.
which is a call for this is called emotional chastity, right? This is part of modesty of speech, right? That we're recognizing that I'm just entering into the world of the other, right? So can we, and I also like to throw this out here, like, like it's a set of 3 dates, right? And the first set of 3 dates is frivolous. It's completely ridiculous. It's
Hmm.
like utterly joyful. Go do putt-putt or bowling or something like that's just fun. And you sign up for 3 dates in the sense
Hmm.
that like that I want to get to know you as a person. We're going to have fun and frivolity. We're going to laugh, right? I'm not going to get heavy and hard into conversation.
Hmm.
We got this kind of
Hmm.
agreement going here, right? And I get
Right.
to know you. How do you interact with other people? And at the end of that third date, hey, you up for another 3 dates? Great. And do the same thing there. And then do another, like fun and frivolous, things like that. And then those 6 dates there, then we've got, okay, I've got some background. I kind of even get to know him. Then maybe we can start to put some bigger pieces of wood on that fire. Maybe
Hmm.
we can start to grow that there. That's where maybe we're going to open up, these are some of the wounds and hurts. Maybe this is where like my past of pornography
Hmm.
was there. And I would say on that issue of pornography, and then I want to drive into that topic is like, is this something we're spending a significant amount of time on in our life, right? Is this something that the things that we love, we spend time and money on? Is that going on in this issue? Because if that's going on there, guess what? Especially gentlemen, I'm speaking to you, but this goes to
Hmm.
the ladies as well. Gentlemen, ladies have a sixth sense. Something that's
Hmm.
built into them. They just
Yeah.
they may not be able to articulate it. You may be able to fool them for a little bit, but they're gonna find out. And when they find out, and it's something that is a big emotional issue, which is pornography, something that can hinder intimacy. That's you're leading to the destruction of that relationship. Something to be aware of there. So I want to drive in here because from your perspective, as a as a therapist, right? How would you say that pornography affects marriages or affects dating relationships? We'll stick there.
Yeah, I mean, exactly the point that you're making, which is that we have to be patient in opening up. Okay, so how does it impact the relationship? Well, again, depending on the degree or the severity of the addiction or of the kind of consumption or use of pornography, it could have detrimental impact. So what we know with regards to research is that we know that it decreases satisfaction in relationships. We know that it can contribute to decreased self-image, decreased positive image of your partner, that there are real impacts that's happening when you're comparing somebody to what you're seeing on the screen. There could also be pressure that's being placed on wanting to create some of those behaviors that you're seeing on the screen. That sixth sense that you spoke about is really beautiful because women do have that. And where women can feel that is that if the relationship's progressing and
Mhm.
there is some introduction of kissing or some low level physical intimacy, women can feel when pressure is starting to be placed on them. And if a guy has an addiction to pornography or even just a dependency to pornography, that his tendency might be to push the boundaries and push the boundaries. And she's going to know that. She's going to pick up on that and she's not going to feel safe. So, sincerely, like I want to reiterate this point. If this is like a daily habit, as you said, how much time, how much energy, how much resources are you putting into this? If this is a daily habit, you're not ready to be in a dating relationship. If it's even multiple times a week, we're spending hours a week on this. Like, just focus on your recovery first. Get your recovery going. Do the things that you need to do to get healthy and not be spending as much time as you're spending on this. And that's where you need to start because you don't want to bring somebody into this orbit if you're not in a place where you're capable of being able to live in freedom, of being able to give of yourself completely to them, of being able to see them and respect them for who they are, and of being able to just love them as they deserve to be loved. So focus first and foremost on your recovery, and then start thinking about getting into a relationship.
I want to jump in here, and I want to be very kind of personal here. And I
Yeah.
think back to when my wife and I we were starting to date, and or no, excuse me, before we were starting to date, there was interest on my part, and
Mhm.
I think there might have been interest on her part, but like I still was dealing with this attachment to
Mhm.
pornography. This
Yeah.
is still there, and and
Yeah.
these emotional wounds are the guilt, the shame, the self hatred, and I don't
Yeah.
know what to do about this necessarily. And
Yeah.
then she's also dealing with a stalker, okay, literally
Oh,
court and all that stuff, right?
mercy. Right.
And mercy indeed.
Wow.
And we know this, that if we would have gotten together gotten together romantically, we would have killed each other. Not probably not literally, but like the relationship probably would have fizzled out. So there's this stuff here, and this is why, take this from a Catholic perspective, especially, God's timing is flawless, and He allows certain experiences to happen in life to bring them up, especially pain. Pain, as C.S. Lewis would say, God whispers through our pleasures, but He shouts through our pain. Pain is the megaphone that He uses to rouse a sleeping world, right? He's trying to wake you up to what is actually going on in your life. And especially if we have any semblance of this desire for marriage, well, you're going to have to go through marriage unless you're doing, mailordergroom.com. I don't recommend that site. But this is
that a real site? That's good.
Actually, true story. It is a real site. I'm not recommending it.
That will not be in the show notes.
It's actually pretty funny. I checked it like 5 years ago. So, and no, I'm not getting on that site. So that's a little side note. But within this is this stuff doesn't just go away, right? We gotta deal with this stuff because we're dealing with two human beings. And side note, right? You're gonna marry. If you get married, you're going to marry someone who's imperfect. I know it hurts our pride, right? You're not perfect. She's not perfect, or vice versa, right? And going to have to work through that stuff, right? So let's drive into this.
How did you navigate that in your dating relationship? You said you came into when you were showing interest in your now wife, you were still dealing with this issue. Yeah. How did you work through that, and how were those conversations for you guys?
Yeah. Well, and it didn't really come up well. She came along in the sense that I had started getting into, I was doing something called theophostic prayer, where the emotions lead to the fire of what's actually going on, which is good for me, but I had to kind of be re-traumatized, which is painful. Then especially discovering something called intensive trauma therapy, where it's drawing and writing. And from that, right, was actually the first time I actually dealt with my issues of pornography, actually going into where were the threads that went through there. And it was in that one of the nights that I actually dealt with that, played Frisbee with her in France at Franciscan University in the town there. And there was some freedom that happened there. There was going to be more that was going to be there. But I would say there's been a continual, I don't want to say this. This is a great question. There's a continual growth in intimacy to open up and to be present there, right? Because things of our past, as I mentioned there, the emotions buried alive are still alive, right? Being able to do the work, Dr. Mario, before marriage, before I got involved with her romantically, was a huge deal, because then I don't have to hide this. I don't have to worry about, is she going to be checking on my phone or things like that. But also realizing, though, that I had done damage to myself. I'd done damage to my ability, like as the Catechism says in paragraph 2332, right? Sexuality is about forming bonds of intimacy with the other. And if there's something in here, and again, we can get into the whole conversation later on spiritual warfare, right? You got some demonic attachment going on here, right? There's a lot of aspect that, but even just emotionally and psychologically, am I going to be able to break through a lot of the comparisons of the images that I'd fed myself for a long time? That was stuff I had to enter into deep healing prayer, and obviously the going through the intensive trauma therapy was incredibly liberating there. So I'd say to anyone there, right, if you are single right now and you have the opportunity to work through this stuff, do it. Enter in, because right now, maybe you're single and you're like, where's my spouse, or when am I getting married? This is not wasted time. God's preparing you. And also, if I'm talking from a male perspective, she's dealing with her own stuff. So can I use this, get myself healed, and then offer my sufferings up for her healing? This is something that will translate legacy through your marriage into your children, maybe your grandchildren, and beyond.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Steve. Certainly, as you said, the therapy piece is what catches my eye more, and I would certainly encourage people to not go through any sort of trauma work on their own or with somebody who isn't qualified, and making sure that they're availing themselves to a skilled clinician who can actually do the work and guide them through that process. As you indicated, it was doing that ultimately unlocked the healing for you to be able to get to the place where you can then be romantic and move forward in a relationship and understanding what that meant. And I think that's the key. And that's, I think, what we continue to be drawing in right now. So certainly want to just encourage guys to help them to find somebody to get the healing that they need to work through this. And again, if you're in a relationship right now, it doesn't mean that you have to go break up right now. It could be that just taking a pause, assessing where you're at, reiterate the statement. Is it hindering you? Is it a distraction? Is it preventing you? Is it an occasion for sin if you guys are struggling with chastity? Or is it something that is genuinely calling you to love more? And if it can do that and force you to get outside of yourself, then continue on with the relationship. And one other bit of just kind of, this is an aside. No, we've been talking about dating, but just for married men who may be listening, who maybe have gotten the healing work done and they're on the other side of it, but maybe they're in moments of intimacy with their wife and memories emerge of previous things that they saw. A simple kind of hack here is just open your eyes. Just open your eyes and just look at your wife and let her gaze, let her beauty be what captures your imagination in that moment. And you will see that those thoughts will just go away in response to the goodness that is in front of you.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And there's something to be said for making love with the lights on, right? Especially, obviously, there's a conversation with your wife on that one, right? But I think we are.
Depends how comfortable she feels.
Exactly, right. But again, this is something very tender and very really delicate about these matters, because the issue of pornography has impacted, I would argue, everybody's view of themselves and everybody's view of others. This is the pornified view we're in, and there especially, what is our image of our body? Our body is who we are. Right. And the body really matters. Right. And especially for women, right. If their husband has been involved in this, like, there may be some concern over, is he seeing me as a person or is he seeing me as an object here? And that has a big role in this play, how intimacy is going to play out in that relationship. So again, if we can deal with this before marriage, do it, but it's never too late to start now.
Yeah. So when those conversations are had in dating, but another thing that I think is important also is, well, what role do you want your girlfriend to have with regards to your recovery, or how much should she be aware of as you're progressing on this journey? Here's just some advice that I think would be important on this. It doesn't have to be a weekly conversation. I don't think you have to get into all the weeds, all the details of everything, but maybe monthly there needs to be some type of check-in. She needs to know, like, are you doing the work that you've promised? Are you reading the book? Are you going to counseling? Are you going to the groups? Are you doing the work that you've committed to doing, that you've told her you're going to do? And if you are doing that, then great. And you should be able to share that with freedom and to be able to talk about the victories and talk about the growth that's happening, the insights that you're gaining through your recovery process. And she needs to be able to see that. It's going to be part of her own discernment for you and whether or not she wants to continue on in this relationship. But if you're checking in, like I said, somewhat regularly, it doesn't have to be every single week, but somewhat regularly, and you're not doing the work, you're not saying that, you're not following through with the things that you said you're going to do, then she's going to take that information also and know that that's going to be part of her own discernment. Dating is discernment. Dating, you're not married yet. You haven't made that vow. You haven't stepped into that sacrament. You're just exploring and getting to a point where you're trying to say, yes, I can choose you and I'm willing to give my life to you for as long as I have breath. You're still in that phase of making that decision. And so if a dating relationship breaks off, it will be painful for sure, but it's also not the end either. So just want to offer that.
Thank you. No, and I think the term discernment is really important. To discern, from the Latin, to see what is and what is not, right? I think if we have been colored by this subject and this topic and this reality of pornography, if that has been the way in which, the lens in which we see ourselves, see others, see relationships, it's going to impact very profoundly in a big way, right? So the question is, how are you seeing? What are you seeing? And if we aren't being clear, if we don't have a clear answer on those things, it's to take a step back in relationship. And you prompted me actually, and we have just a couple minutes left. And Dr. Mario, I think we're going to have to do this again, because I have literally so many questions I want to ask you in this and get your feedback. But something that's come up, especially with clients, actually a current client who is without sharing any details, but wife, and we've seen this occasionally, where the wife is saying, and maybe girlfriends as well, I want all the details. Right? I've got my take on this. I'd like to hear what are your thoughts on that?
I generally am not an advocate for sharing all the details because it can create scenarios in somebody's head. So it's kind of like an affair. Okay. When an affair happens, the one spouse who didn't commit the transgression, the one that's been hurt by the affair, hurt comes up, anxiety comes up, and there's a lot of questions. And when we get anxious, when we get hurt, we think that overthinking is what's going to solve the problem. So you want to ask every question, ask every question, ask every question. What can end up happening in an affair situation is that it becomes it's self-reinforcing loop or negative loop, or you start asking these questions and you're getting the details, and then it hurts more. And then that gets stuck in your head, and then you're thinking about that, and then more and more. And it just becomes a place where it is not helpful. It's counterproductive. It's not aiding in recovery. And so I don't think that sharing every single detail is what's important. I don't think it will be helpful. I think that we have to share enough for sure, but I do think that there is a line, and back to kind of this question of discernment, there is a line where oversharing becomes counterproductive.
I'm in 100% agreement with you on this. So, all right, here's a tough one. And I'm going to build on this.
Yeah.
Where's the line, Dr. Mario?
Yeah, where's the line? That's a great question. Okay, so it does depend on, I know your focus is more on pornography, but if we're speaking about other type of sexual behaviors, okay, then there needs to be some disclosure about that. If we're talking massage parlors or prostitutes or escort services or things of that nature, like we're outside of the realm of just strict pornography. Again, I don't necessarily think that you need to disclose what she looked like and her height and the details of her physical appearance, all of that. That's kind of what I'm saying is the nitty gritty there, everything that was done, all of those specific details, that to me is where the line is. Similar when it comes to pornography, I'm not sure if all the nitty gritty of what was being looked at, or unless it's illegal behavior. Okay. We want to be clear about that. That all of those nitty gritty details, I'm not sure if that's what needs to be disclosed. In the steps with SA, I believe it's the 9th step where it's like when you're making reparations, as long as it's helpful for the other person, as long as it doesn't cause further damage to the other person, that there has to be some discretion that's there about it. Now, I'm saying that not as a cop out, okay? Because I don't want some guy listening to this and being like, oh, well, this professional saying I don't have to disclose anything to my wife. Like, he just said it, like, because that's how guys are going to interpret this. No. Like, you need to come clean and disclose what's going on. But start back to this fire analogy, start small and then keep going in engaging how the conversation's going to be able to determine like what's enough.
Yeah, the piece I would add to this, and we're drawing to the close of this conversation. This is so fast and beautiful. One of the things that we will teach clients is where my focus goes, my energy flows, and that can go positive and that can go negative, right? And the evil one, right? Remember, spiritual warfare is a very real thing. The evil one is very real. He's prowling like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour, as St. Peter reminds us, right? And where does he start? He goes right after our minds. What's going in there? And there's something to be said for, this isn't a Catholic phrase necessarily, but curiosity killed the cat in many cases, right? And so I think there's something for the desire to want to know. But then if we bring this back to the Garden of Eden, right? What got Eve in trouble in the first place is saw the fruit. It was good for knowledge, right? So the question is, what kind of knowledge is it? Is it knowledge to simply satisfy curiosity? Or is it something here that the goal is to help to heal the person, heal myself perhaps, and also to restore the relationship. And obviously we're talking about here specifically about marriage, but dating also is that should be the goal also, so that there can be healing here, so we can discern, see clearly, are we called to take the next step to engagement? And then still that's a discernment there, right? Are we called for our two lives to become one flesh? So I think this is where a robust prayer life is going to be really needed. And then also like learning these basic human ways of being able to discuss things. And that's where I think you're one of the values of the work that you do, Dr. Mario, and where I want to spread the word of the work that you're doing is helping couples, right? Whether they're married, whether they're not, right? They're serious about a relationship, to be able to get another language, to be able to work through these things, right? Really important here. So we're at the very end of this conversation. What last message would you want to leave with those our guests who are hearing this?
I just want to leave them with a message of hope and encouraging them that like recovery is possible. Okay. And you just have to be honest with where you're at on this stage in this journey. And if you're not ready to be in a relationship, then don't be in a relationship. Just be smart about it. But if you are ready, then take the steps forward. You don't have to be perfect. No one's saying you have to be perfect, but take the steps forward so that you can move forward in the relationship that God's calling you to have. And recognizing that every step along the way, God is calling us, God is guiding us, God's providence is at work as it leads us. And so just continue to take those steps forward, surrounded by his love and his mercy.
Love it. I love it. Love it. Dr. Mario, best place for people to get in touch with you and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, you got my website up there. drmariosacasa.com is the best way for people to get a hold of me. I strongly encourage folks to check out my YouTube channel, Dr. Mario. It's YouTube at Dr. Mario Sacasa. And my podcast is Always Hope. I've been doing the show for 6 years. We are providing solutions to a better life that's anchored in faith and science. Numerous episodes related to marriage and sexuality and dating. That's the focus of the show, together with mental health stuff, just being able to provide solid resources for folks. So please hit the website. You can reach me there, or please check out the podcast specifically on YouTube. It is available on the audio only platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google as well. But love for people to be able to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. So please check out the show, Always Hope.
Dr. Mario, it's a pleasure and a privilege. This is the first time we've met. I may this just be the first, shall we say here, because you have a wealth of knowledge. You're a titan in this area of helping with dating and marriage and relationships. And I thank you for the work that you're doing for individuals, for couples, and for the church itself.
Wonderful. Thanks, Steve, for the opportunity. It was great to join you today.
In honor. And just hang on. We'll chat afterwards. And to all of you who have heard this, I do encourage you to check out Dr. Mario's website at drmariosacasa.com. And I encourage you, do not wait to work through your wounds. There's hurt, but there's also healing that can come in. And this is what we believe here at the Redeemed Vision Podcast, that nothing is wasted, everything is redeemable. So may everything we do give glory to the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Until next time, I'm Steve Pokorny, and this is the Redeemed Vision Podcast.
The Redeemed Vision Podcast is an outreach of Freedom Coaching. To learn more, check out freedom-coaching.net and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and MeWe.